Hey everyone! Today we dive into the story of the Seljuk Empire, a massive high medieval powerhouse that rose up under the rule of the Oghuz Turks Kanik tribe. Known as the Great Seljuk Empire, it stretched across an enormous area, covering nearly 4 million square kilometers, from Anatolia and the Levant in the west to the Hindu Kush Mountains in the east. This was a culturally rich Sunni Muslim empire with a Turco-Persian blend, lasting from 1037 all the way to 308. Though it lost control over much of its territory before the very end. The Seljuk Empire was founded in 1037 by two brothers, Tughril and Shagri, who shared power with their uncle, Musa Yabhu. Their journey began when they left their original lands near the Aral Sea and moved into Khorasan, then deeper into Iran. They eventually headed west and even took over Baghdad, stepping into the power struggle that had been brewing between the Abbasid Caliphate and the Umayyad Empire. The empire's expansion into eastern Anatolia soon led to fierce clashes with the Byzantine Empire, culminating in the famous Battle of Manzikert in 1071. This was a huge moment, as it shifted the balance of power in the region, weakening the Byzantine grip on Anatolia and setting the stage for the gradual Turkification of the area. As they grew, the Seljuks united much of the Muslim world beyond the Arab lands, playing a crucial role during the First and Second Crusades. They also sparked artistic and cultural movements that shaped the era. But by the 1140s, their power started fading, and they were gradually overtaken by other rising empires, like the Khwarezmians in the east and the Zengids and Ayyubids in the west. The last piece of the Seljuk legacy, the Sultanate of Rum, held on until 1308. So where did all of this begin? It started with Seljuk, the founder of the dynasty and a fierce warlord from the Kanik tribe. He led his people to the banks of the Sir Darya River near Jend, where they converted to Islam around 985. From there, Seljuks' descendants continued to expand, fighting off neighboring powers and seizing territory bit by bit. After the fall of the Samanid Empire in 909, the Seljuks began carving out a base of their own. It was Tughril and Shagri, the next generation, who really pushed the Seljuk expansion into new heights. They were part of a wave of Oghuz Turks migrating into Iran, seeking alliances and sometimes facing battles. At first, things weren't easy. Tughril and Shagri faced defeat and even had to flee a few times. But they kept pushing, eventually reaching Khorasan, a jewel of the Ghaznavid Empire. Through strategy and relentless campaigns, they wrestled control of Khorasan and surrounding regions from the Ghaznavids. One of their biggest wins came in 1040, when they crushed the Ghaznavids in the Battle of Dandanakan, forcing their ruler Masud to abandon his western lands. This victory opened the door for Tughril to set up a Persian-based administration, and by 1046, the Abbasid Caliph officially recognized Tughril as the ruler of Khorasan. From there, the Seljuks ventured west, making their first major impact against the Byzantines. In 1048, led by Ibrahim Yenil, Tughril's half-brother, they launched a powerful raid on Byzantine territories. The devastation was so intense that even the local Byzantine magnates described their homelands as ruined and dangerous. And in 1055, Tughril finally entered Baghdad, toppling the Umayyads and bringing Iraq under Seljuk control, where it would remain for decades. So, after Tughril's initial conquests, his nephew Alp Arslan took the reins and really expanded Seljuk power. Alp Arslan, the son of Tughril Beg, took control of Armenia and Georgia by 1064, and in 1068, he decided to push even further by invading the Byzantine Empire. In this campaign, he managed to annex most of Anatolia, effectively pushing the Byzantines out of the region. His most famous victory was at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. This battle was a turning point because it essentially crushed any significant Byzantine resistance to Turkish expansion into Anatolia. Interestingly, although Georgia recovered and even managed to hold off some Seljuk forces for a bit, they soon found themselves more exposed as the Byzantines continued to pull back. In 1073, Seljuk commanders from cities like Ganja and Divin launched more attacks into Georgian lands. While Georgian King George II initially held his ground, even retaking Kars, the Seljuk Emir Ahmad quickly retaliated and defeated the Georgians at Kvalis Seek. Alp Arslan's strategy didn't just focus on direct control, he actually empowered his Turkoman generals to establish smaller principalities or beyliks throughout former Byzantine Anatolia. Over just a couple of years, these Turkoman groups had spread across a massive area, reaching all the way to the Aegean. This decentralized approach led to the formation of multiple beyliks, each ruling its own territory, from the Seljukids in the northeast, the Artukids in the southeast, to the Danish Mendes in central Anatolia, and several others along the western coasts. Then came Malik Shah I, Alp Arslan's successor. Malik Shah, together with his highly influential Persian vizier Nizam al-Mulk, pushed the empire's borders even further. Under Malik Shah, the Seljuks expanded from their western borders with the Byzantines all the way to the edges of China in the east. Malik Shah's era is often considered the Golden Age of the Seljuks, and it wasn't just because of military successes. It was during his rule that the Seljuk capital moved from Ray to Isfahan, and the influential Iqta military system was established. Nizam al-Mulk even founded the Nizamiya University in Baghdad, a key intellectual center of the time. In 1087, the Abbasid Caliph himself recognized Malik Shah's vast influence, calling him the Sultan of the East and West. Back at home, though, Nizam al-Mulk's power was steadily growing. Some contemporary accounts even referred to this period as the Nizam's state. But the rise of the Hashashin, or assassins, began to challenge that stability. This secretive group led by Hassan I-Sabah had a particular dislike for Nizam al-Mulk's influence, and they were responsible for assassinating several key Seljuk officials, possibly including Nizam al-Mulk himself. Following Malik Shah's death in 1092, the Seljuk Empire began to fragment. Malik Shah's brothers and sons started to fight over control, each trying to claim a piece of the empire. His son Mahmud was proclaimed Sultan in Persia, but his claim was contested by his brothers and even by his uncle Tutushai, who eventually lost his life in one of these internal battles. In 1118, Malik Shah's third son, Ahmad Sanyar, finally managed to consolidate his rule over the empire, but even then, the Seljuks remained divided, with rival claimants in Baghdad and elsewhere. And things took a pretty dramatic turn after the Oghuz Turks rebelled in 1153. They actually managed to capture Sultan Sanyar, the Seljuk ruler at the time. He escaped 3 years later, but sadly passed away in 1157. His death only accelerated the empire's decline. By then, the Atabegs, who were technically supposed to be under Seljuk rule, were pretty much independent, running Syria and other regions as they pleased. After Sanyar's death, the Seljuk Empire broke apart even more. Regions like the Kerman Seljuk Sultanate and the Sultanate of Rum in Anatolia, with its capital at Konya, became standalone powers. Around this time in Egypt, Saladin took control after Nuadin's death and established the Ayyubid dynasty, capturing much of Syria. And in other parts of the empire, new regional powers started to rise. For example, the Kingdom of Georgia expanded its influence in the region, as did the Armenian Kingdom of Cilicia. The Abbasid Caliphate also regained some authority and allied with the Crimean Empire to counter the Seljuks. For a brief period, Tughril III attempted to reunify the empire, but he ultimately couldn't hold on. His defeat by the Crimean ruler Ala al-Din Tekish in 1194 marked the official end of the Great Seljuk Empire. The Crimean Empire took over, but even their rule didn't last long. In the early 1200s, the Mongols stormed through the region and effectively wiped out Crimean control. Over in Anatolia, the Sultanate of Rum, which was the last remnant of Seljuk rule, survived a bit longer, but it too fell to the Mongols in the 1260s, fragmenting into smaller emirates called beyliks. One of these beyliks, as you might know, was the Ottomans, who would go on to build their own massive empire. Now, if we look at the Seljuks' governance style, they were at their peak under Malik Shah I. The empire didn't have a single capital but was divided between an eastern capital in Marv and various western cities like Ray, Isfahan, and Baghdad. This structure let them control a vast territory stretching from Central Asia to the Middle East. When it came to culture, the Seljuks leaned heavily into Persian influences. Although they were Turkic, their language and culture became highly Persianized, and they contributed to the fusion of Persian and Turkic traditions. Persian became the primary language for administration and literature, and it's said that the Seljuk sultans themselves preferred Persian poetry. They even adopted Persian titles like Shahanshah, or King of Kings. A key cultural figure was the Seljuk vizier, Nizam al-Mulk, who wrote the Siyasatnama, or Book of Politics. This influential work laid out ideals for good governance and mixed Islamic teachings with the traditions of ancient Iranian kingship. In terms of religion, the Seljuks were Sunni Muslims and were pretty serious about promoting Sunni Islam. They built a network of madrasas, which helped Sunni Islam take a firm hold in Persia and Iraq. Some of their viziers, like al-Kunduri, were known to persecute certain Shia groups, but this policy softened a bit under later viziers like Nizam al-Mulk. And finally, the Seljuks' military was originally more of a nomadic, family-based system, but by Malik Shah's reign, it had evolved into a formidable force with thousands of troops, including Turkmens, Mamluks, and infantry. The Turkmens were essential to Seljuk expansion, especially in Anatolia, but they weren't always easy to control due to their dependence on grazing lands and their tendency to pillage. So, in the end, the Seljuks had a massive impact on the region, from shaping Islamic governance and education to influencing the spread of Persian culture and language. Though their empire eventually fragmented and fell, they set the stage for new empires like the Ottomans, who would carry forward and build on their legacy.